Good morning, everyone. My name is Hiro Sasaki, and I am an alcoholic. Of course, it's noon there, so good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's evening in the UK, so good evening, everyone. Hello, whatever time it is, wherever you are. And if it's a recording, it might be whatever time you're playing it. Oh, okay, that was not an auspicious beginning, but hello, good morning, hello, good afternoon, day. Um, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to be sober. Today I'm not confused. I'm not confused about what my power on its own can accomplish. And what it can accomplish is a lot until it becomes nothing. And that's the most confusing thing about my own power. Um, a lot of people are doing day counts. Congratulations to the day counters. Today I have 5,960 days today. I'm not a math wizard. What that means is my sobriety date is November 12th, 2007. And that's the day that a power greater than me that I wasn't looking for, terrified of, didn't believe in, was running away from, had a huge resentment against, separated me from King Alcohol and his little buddies. And I'm really grateful for that. And it's my first time in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a little bewildering. Then again, I try to do everything to not come here. Um, hmm. This is my first time saying on Zoom that I have a sponsor, and his name is Johnny H. And he's the founder of my home group, the Bellflower Big Book Group. And we meet on our main meeting is on Monday nights. We have 5 meetings, but our main meeting is on Monday nights in Southern California, Bellflower, California. And if you're ever planning to be in Southern California, my number is right next to my name. Feel free to text me or WhatsApp me or line me. And if you give me a couple weeks in advance, I'll change my schedule and we can meet up when the old timers get there. And they set up chairs at 4 p.m. for a 7:30 meeting, and we'll head over there and we'll go around the room and say hi to people. And we'll go down the street to grab some dinner, and we'll fellowship a little bit. Come back a little bit before 6, because at 6:15 there's a beginners meeting and someone gets up to the podium and shares on what it was like for 15 minutes for the first 90 days of their sobriety. There's an ask it basket that goes around the room. So then they answer questions in the ask it basket for 15 minutes. Then we round up and hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. And then because my home group is known around town as kind of an almost pathologically rule following group, we line up like right down the center aisle, down the side aisles. And what we're doing is we're going to thank the speaker. And then you see us all kind of scatter off. And what we're doing at that point is, well, the vapors and the smokers are going off to vape and smoke and do what they need to do. And what the rest of us are doing is doing our pre-meeting commitments. I am currently bathroom captain, which is one of my favorite commitments. It keeps me humble. And then what I like to do is, especially if you're like me, like if you're new, you're like, what's all this kind of stuff about the rituals of the home group? What I like to do is I like to get in the greeting line, and the greeting line gets to be about 2 blocks long, because our home group gets to have about 300 people on a Monday night, about 150 on Zoom, and this thing happens. And if you're anything like me, where if your head just doesn't shut off and is just yammering at you all the time. And if it's just saying, like really judgmental things, either about other people or about yourself, or just really prideful things about yourself that end up, of course, being judgmental about others who can't live up to you. And if you're someone who's really, really good at feeling bad, if you're good at stuff this hasn't happened in a few weeks, but where my head will wake me up at 3 a.m. Hey, wake up, mother effer, time to worry. And you're just like, oh, and then you're just wake up terrified. And it's fine to wake up terrified. That happens. I've had nightmares since I was very small. And the problem is I wake up and it's like my mind is trying to convince me that I'm required to worry as hard as I can. And it's only if I worry as hard as I can for an hour, 2 hours, a week, like the entire month, that somehow I'll be able to change some catastrophe in the future. And of course, this is a complete fallacy. Or my mind will wake me up and I'll just be grinding on something that I thought was foolish or stupid, and I just feel so dumb. And because I'm so terrified of being unfairly, or actually even more fairly, negatively perceived by anyone. And uh, and of course, I'll grind on that just and because my mind convinces me that if I regret the past, that somehow I can change that. Of course, neither of these things are true. I'm really good at things like depression, what psychologists call the negative triad of a negative cognitive triad of depression, where I end up with a pervasive negative view of self, world, and future. Where I'm like, oh, I suck, and all of you suck, and we're all going to suck forever. Or I'm also really, really good at I'm good at wanting to die. I'm good at complete despair. I'm also good at wildly misperceiving the amount of time it'll take to do something, so that I postpone it and postpone it and postpone it and postpone it until I get to this place where I realize that there's not possibly enough time to even to do a stellar job, certainly, but not even to do an okay job. It's going to be a subpar job, and I'm so terrified of doing a subpar job that I end up either doing a subpar job or not doing it at all and making up some excuse. And these are all things I'm really, really good at. If you identify with any of this stuff, a mind that's really mean to you, that tells you things like, "Hero, you suck more than anyone's ever sucked before." Like, this is what my mind does. Um, it's important to let you know that there's an answer to that in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not that your mind is suddenly going to always kind of perceive things exactly the way they are. That's not my experience. My experience is when I get in that greeting line, and about 7:10 or so is when rush hour happens, and it's just one person after another. And if you just stand next to me, and your goal is to just invite people into Alcoholics Anonymous, and try to maybe remember three more names, and you observe that really odd thing like um, recency effect. The latest name you heard is the one you remember, and weirdly how it like pushes out all the names that came before. And if you just invite people, welcome people to AA, like, "Hi, my name is Hero, welcome," and say hello to the people that whose names you remember. Or if you stand behind someone who knows everyone, then you could just say the person's name like after them, and it seems like you know. And while you're doing that, you'll discover what I discover, which is just for a little while, the mind gets quiet. I'm just doing this one thing, inviting people into my home. And that's a wonderful thing. If you're new to AA and you identify with being a problem thinker like me, and if you also identify that with the idea that drinking helps my thinking problem, it really quiets my brain. That's what I discovered at age 12. And if you identify with how drinking the way you want to makes you kind of end up drinking in ways that you kind of didn't approve of, and uh, and then all of a sudden drinking exacerbates your thinking problem. And then if you decide that you want to stop and you can't stay stopped forever, and if you take a drink and you can't predict what's going to happen after that to your drinking or to your thinking, and if you've gotten to a place where you've come to believe in the futility of life as you've been living it, welcome, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. As my friend Larry T in my home group says, and Larry T I think is the poet laureate of the home group. He says, "Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome to being divinely inconvenienced for the rest of your lives." If you sit all the way down in your seat, then you might discover, like me, that Alcoholics Anonymous works really, really well. And I've got two things. Sorry, I thought I was hearing something. I'm in a hotel room in Las Vegas. I apologize. The background behind me, I don't have pink lights. There's like this shiny pink reflective stuff on the hotel, and so the entire room looks pink. It's very odd. I feel like I'm in a bordello. And if you're anything like that, I've got good news and bad news for you, for all the day counters. If you're an overthinker like me, and that sometimes is exciting in terms of like fantasy and like getting you away from stuff, or sometimes it's exciting in terms of the kind of work that you might do, but is often deadly. I've I've got bad news and good news for you. All your feeling bad skills. My experience is I haven't gotten bad at my feeling bad skills. That's the bad news. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I've been practicing how to feel bad since I was really, really small, against my knowledge and without my knowledge and against my will. But I do have a promise for you. If you stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, you get a sponsor, you take all these steps like I have and belong to a home group and get this fellowship around you, that you don't always have to believe your mind. You don't always have to believe your mind. I didn't know that that was either possible or desirable. And I'm a clinical psychologist. I mean, I just did not know. And yeah, it's just a bizarre thing. Mm. So welcome if you're new, nearly new, recent returnee. It's been hammered into me that my job for this, for now, the next, like a half hour, 35 minutes is to tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like today. And the people that I'm particularly trying to focus my talk toward are the people in their first 30 days or people who may be in their last 30 days. And when I first heard a sponsee talk about that, about talking to the person in their last 30 days, shivers went up and down my spine. When I think back over let's see, today's the 6th. So as I then last month I had 29 months, 29 days. As I think back on the last 23 days, 3 months, and 16 years of my sobriety, it's clear that there were many, many days where I was easily in my last 30 days. Easily in my last 30 days where I'm justifying, rationalizing, I don't need to go to my home group tonight. Or letting the phone just go to voicemail when a sponsee or someone who needs help is calling. I can talk to them later. Or just judging my way out of Alcoholics Anonymous, one day at a time. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that something pulls me back in. Something pulls me back in, whether it's my own suffering, whether it's someone asking me for help, whether it's an argument with my wife, that makes me realize, oh my God, the futility of my thinking and my behavior when it's not God-centered. Today's daily reflection, thank you for the reading, is all about faith. And that was confusing to me when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that I knew that I knew that I had some handicaps when it came to faith. Let's put it that way. And because what I was like before, I was made in Japan. I was born there, and my parents moved to North America when before I was a year old. My father was enrolled in a PhD program at McMaster University in Toronto, and my mom and I stayed in Japan while I was really small, and then we joined them before I had an autobiographical memory. And as I think about my parents, man, I'm a firstborn son, and if you know anything about Japanese culture, it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of expectation. And I didn't experience that as hopeful. I experienced it as a burden, really. There's all these expectations of me that felt really difficult. And growing up after my dad finished his PhD, he studied organic chemistry, and he got a postdoc in Tucson, Arizona, and that's really where my autobiographical memory comes online. And I remember not feeling different because I knew I was aware by then that I looked different. I was aware that I talked different, and I had my little bowl haircut. And this is was this 1969, 1970, and we're there for a couple of years, and during those 2 years of nursery school and kindergarten, my goal was just to fit in. I knew I couldn't fit in kind of phenotypically, like face and eyes and such, skin, hair, but man, by golly, I was going to try and fit in linguistically. I just did not want to. I want to be able to figure out the difference between the R's and the L's. And I wanted to be able to figure out the pronouns. I was saying shiz instead of hers. And that was embarrassing when people would correct me. And I finally got the pronouns right. And today it's confusing, but I know it's just a matter of practice. So I'm going to get it one day. And And then from there, we moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and this is like 1971-ish. We were the Asian family in town, and I'd finally gotten my English right, and I could fit in linguistically. And then suddenly we moved to a town in the deep South where I don't fit in linguistically at all because the word "hi" has three syllables in Tuscaloosa. Like "hi," and talking to Glenn a little bit like before the meeting, I can feel a little bit of my drawl coming back, and it's not that it's because I'm good at mimicry. I'm good at like trying to sound like you and trying to act like you. And what that means is I feel like if I could just be a chameleon, if I could just find some way to fit in. And I remember being there was hideous. I didn't know, in first grade that I would be required at age 42 to surrender to a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know. All I knew then was that the feeling of surrender felt horrible. Surrender felt like, I'm walking up to the cool kids and they're posted up at the corner after first grade. And they're like, "Oh, here comes Haro. Let's play war. You play the Japs." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay. Okay." And so, I didn't know the words for that. I mean, that might have been, just simple microaggressions. It certainly felt like bullying, and it might have been just casual racism. I don't know. All I knew then was it didn't feel good, but I really wanted to fit in. So I'm like, okay, I will. And we moved to Southern California, right before third grade, middle of the '70s, and I there's a lot of Asian Americans in Southern California, a lot of Asian Americans in Claremont, California, which is part of Los Angeles County. And I discovered that I don't fit in around other people that look like me because, they got a name for a kid like me. They're calling me things like banana and Twinkie, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. I'm like, I don't even fit in here. And uh, so fitting in was always such a struggle. And I discovered at age 12 that I could cease fighting. I could cease fighting everything and everyone in terms of fitting in. And the answer came in the form of alcohol. And I discovered that alcohol works really, really well to get rid of my sense of difference. I can just fit in. Or if it's a sense of difference, it's a sense of superior difference. And yeah, so to go very quickly, I just, one of the things that alcohol unleashed was it shifted the sense of feeling terminally different and terminally alienated. Or I didn't have these words then, but now I can look back and go, I felt alienated. I felt, I felt like an outsider. I felt a sense of uh, like this internalized oppression. I was so, by the time I got deep into my teens, I'm drinking the way I want to, and then I'm smoking weed and whatever else, doing whatever else the other kids are doing, just to try and get out of myself. And and I remember just getting so incredibly angry. And my parents, they're just good, non-alcoholic immigrants that just wanted me to have a better life than they had when they were small. And they had their goal was just the same goal that every single parent has, that they just wanted me to not struggle the way they did, not suffer in the ways they did, and to get a better head start, like start off better than they did. And it's the same goal that all parents have for their kids. And they succeeded. They succeeded beautifully with me. And if you have kids and you've succeeded in that way, you might end up with a kid like me too. You might have already done that, where the evidence of their success with me was just, I was so entitled, and I had no idea how much they had sacrificed and how much they had just poured, the love they had poured into me. And I had no idea. First of all, because they didn't become really kind of emotionally expressive until later. I think both my younger sister and my younger brother ended up with very different parents than me, and that's as it should be. All parents are like try to evolve as parents, but this thing I discovered in Alcoholics Anonymous, I look back and the things that I thought made my parents so weird. I mean, you know what made them weird? They're Japanese. And the weirdness is just my internalized racism. I didn't have those words then. I didn't know that's what it was then. I just wanted them to be like American. How could they be American? Because they're Japanese. And I remember that horrible feeling when I'm like in grade school and I'm bringing back my report card and I've got 4 A's and a B and I'm so proud of my 4 A's and my buddy from down the street, he's got like 3 A's and 2 B's and his parents give him $1, like 1970s, like 1970s dollars, right? And for each of the A's. And what do my parents do? They're like, what happened with this B? And I believe that they're intergenerational subtitles. That more pronounced with the increase in age, but especially pronounced with difference in culture. And there are subtitles that I now know were there, and I can read them now, looking back, but I didn't know that they existed. And I didn't know that in these subtitles were the things that they couldn't say, but what they were trying to communicate. Um, in Japanese, there's this idea of kuki o yomu. Kuki o yomu means to read the air. I am illiterate in terms of air reading. I'm American. Say what you mean. And I had no idea that if I were able to read the air, I would have seen these subtitles, and the subtitles would have said when they were asking about those bees, Hiroshi, we love you so much. We love you so much. And the only way we know that you can succeed here, I mean, you're never going to fit in racially, but the way that you can thrive here in the West is you can excel academically. And if you excel academically, we know that you'll have a better position here in the U.S. and we'll never have to worry about you. And this is the one thing that we know that we can nurture and grow in you. And this is how we're going to show you that we love you. Didn't know that. It just felt mean and weird. And now I know that, of course, they were proud of me. And of course, they were proud of those A's. And of course, they were worried that if they let the B's or the C's slide, that somehow they would have failed me. And I didn't know this at that time. So I was so angry. I was furious at them. And I was such an angry kid. And of course, this is when punk rock is coming from the UK and invading the West Coast and LA and as often as possible heading to LA and Hollywood to go see shows. And I'm a chameleon though. I can't commit completely to like one subculture. So here's the thing. About 2018, about January 2018, I'm sitting in what then was the in-person Tuesday night Japanese speaking meeting. And I'm 11 years sober at this time. I've been going to this meeting weekly since I was new sober. And because my dear friend Judy Kadudi, who got sober in 1970, one of the founders of my home group with Johnny H, my new sponsor as of Monday, she took me under her wing early on. She said, she would tell me things like, pick me up on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Don't be late, because she didn't drive, and I was on Judy duty. And I would drive her around everywhere, and she'd have me drive her to the Japanese speaking meeting. We'd go to the Japanese speaking meeting, and as a result of being there, it was bilingual, and I got to practice my Japanese, and that was amazing. I started to fall in love with like being Japanese, and like fully embrace this in sobriety. And I remember this one particular night where someone volunteers to read the chapter 5, the 12 steps, and they're reading the 12 steps, and I'm hearing the 12 steps for the first time. And they read it every single Tuesday night, but I'm hearing it for the first time, and the first half of the first step is exactly the same. The admission of my powerlessness over alcohol, and our lives have become unmanageable. That was translated like this. Omoi dori ni ikite ikenakatta. Omoi dori ni ikite ikenakatta means we couldn't live our lives the way we thought. Literally means that. The heart of it, it's we couldn't live our lives the way we wanted. And when I heard this, a huge, like, I had the God hairs sticking up on my arm and the shivers on my spine. And because this really blew me away. When I drink the way I want, and I end up drinking in ways I didn't give permission to initially. When I drink the way I want, because I'm a hedonist. I try to avoid pain as much as possible, like pathologically, and I try to pursue pleasure as much as I can. I'm a peak experience guy. Like I want to feel amazing all the time, and and of course, in my drinking, I discovered that the harder I pursue pleasure, the harder I avoid pain, the more my life seems to be filled with unavoidable pain, and the more even simple pleasures seem fleeting. And and then because when I drink the way I want to, I end up drinking in ways that I don't give permission to. I end up drinking in ways I don't want to. And so the more I drink the way I want to, the less I'm able to drink the way I want to. And the more the more I try to live the way I want to, not only the less I can live the way I want to, but the less I even want this life, the less I even want to live. And looking back, that happened when I was 16. I had a handful of Librium and a handful of Valium and a bottle of Bacardi 151 ready to go. I calculated this to cross the blood-brain barrier and just, go gently into that good night, as Dylan Thomas would say. And I forgot I was a puker. So, woke up to a cleanup in my room on that shag carpet with that vomit and half dissolved pills. And weirdly happy to be alive and chagrined at my stupidity. That's something I'm really good at doing, like telling myself how stupid I am, which is ridiculous because, you know, I'm very smart. I'm very, very smart. I used to have an eidetic memory, which means, I would read something and I know exactly what it is. And as a teenager, I also identified with that thing that John Lennon talked about, like genius is pain. And I really tried to kind of dumb down as much as I could, and in a way that would make my intelligence less painful. In fact, one of my heroes is a guy named Fritz Perls. He founded this school of therapy called Gestalt therapy. And Fritz Perls used to say that the intellect is the whore of the intelligence. And when I first heard this, I'm like, oh my God, I've been listening to a whore, and it's painful. And if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous and you've been in rooms where people are old timers are saying things to you like, take the cotton out of the ears and put it in your mouth, sit down, shut up. And you might get the idea that Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps are an anti-intellectual program. They're not. They're not. Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps are designed to help me survive my intelligence, to survive my intellect. In fact, in step one, what I get to do is I get to admit my powerlessness, my complete powerlessness. And just like it was read today in today's daily reflections, like that come to believe thing, I don't need to try and come to believe in step two if I'm agnostic or atheist. All I need to do to get there is to come to believe in the hopelessness and the futility of my life as I've been living it. That's it. And here's what it took for me to even get to that point. 30 years of drinking, graduate from that high school, get into and graduate from one of the big schools in Los Angeles. It takes me 7 years instead of 4. I get into a top 25 PhD program in English literature in the Midwest. I bewilderingly appear to have seasonal affective disorder and graduate student writer's block. I do all the reading, go to all my classes, but I can't seem to finish half my papers. I am so intellectually entitled that if I've thought it through, my belief is, why should I write it down? I've already done the hard work, not knowing that writing is the hard work. And then I transfer with the credits I have and get a full ride at the other big university in town. My full ride is contingent on my ability to teach freshman writing. So here I am. Once again, I brought seasonal affective disorder to sunny Southern California. I don't understand what's going on with that. Now I know it was untreated alcoholism. I bring my graduate student writer's block with me, and I'm teaching writing, and I can't write half my papers because I've already written them in my head, and I'm so entitled that I don't want to do the work or believe that I can't. Of course I can, but I just lack the power. And I drop out of there, but I meet my wife. We get together in what was then known as the LA riots in April 26th of 92, and we get married in 95. I don't get sober until 2007. You can do the misery math. Fast forward through some odd jobs, and then I conquer on my own power with the assistance of good evidence-based psychology. I conquer my writer's block. Now, once I have the tools to do that, that's fantastic. But I get to a place where my power runs out. My power is amazing. My willpower is amazing, but it tragically stops at horrific moments. And here's where it stops. I've completed all my coursework for this PhD program. I just have the end of a really long paper called a dissertation to complete. I've run the experiment. I've gathered all the data. I'm in the middle of a pre-doctoral internship, and I get a prestigious pre-doctoral internship at a children's hospital. And I'm there in the hospital in spring of 2007. And I'm in the men's room, and I'm having a psychotic episode in the hospital in which I work. And in my case, what psychosis is, I'm seeing things that you don't see and hearing things that you don't hear, and I'm actively delusional. The word delusion appears in chapter 3, more about alcoholism, and like there's the word illusion, seeing something that isn't there. There's the word obsession. The medical definition of an obsession is thinking, thoughts that I believe I have to think in order to be okay. And I'm in the middle of a delusion. The thought I have to think in order to be okay is, I can drink like other people. And the delusion is a belief I have that everyone knows is completely false. And the delusion in the big book is that someday I'll be like other men. And but here I am. I've got a different set of delusions. Like, that they know they're after me. And I'm doing the F word mantra in the mirror in the men's room. Like, F, 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 F. And the reason I'm doing this like patently bizarre behavior is I'm trying really hard not to be psychotic. If you've ever been psychotic, you know that trying your hardest to not be psychotic doesn't work at all. And the reason I'm trying not to be psychotic is so I can provide psychotherapy to a 7-year-old. Now, it's notoriously difficult to provide psychotherapy to a 7-year-old, like play therapy for a 7-year-old girl who has, a generalized anxiety disorder. It's impossible to do that play therapy if the therapist is more terrified than the child. And I'm terrified of things like, the shadows keep moving. And so I don't go and try and provide psychotherapy to that child. I've got enough ethics on board and self-awareness and ability and just enough willpower to go and talk to my bosses and let them know a little what's going on. I'm telling them about the sleep deprivation I've got going on, maybe 2 or 3 hours a night, maybe 3 or 4 nights a week. It's been going on for over 6 months. And maybe I have that sleep deprivation psychosis. And I'm starting to tell them about the panic attacks. And I've got a list of symptoms, and they won't even let me get down past the tip of the iceberg. And they say, you don't have to tell us anymore. Please don't contact your patients. We'll take care of them. Go down the hall to HR. They'll connect you to the employee assistance program. They will connect you to a professional who can help you. Please take all the time you need to get well. Come back when you're better. But please bring a note. And for the very last time, I do that thing. I'm really good at stopping. I'm really good at, until I finally wasn't. I'm really good at stopping, but it's like change. I don't like change. I don't like change until it's already happened. I don't like change until it's already happened and turned out at least moderately, kind of like what I wanted to have happen, right? And just like I don't like moving. I like having had moved and everything's in its right place. So I started the hideous process of going off of everything again. And I, historically, I love having stopped because it makes me a cheap date. But this time's different. This time's different. I need to stay stopped. I need to not take a drink. I need to not take a drug. I need to go back there. Maybe if I just stay on the straight and narrow, I can complete this pre-doctoral internship. Maybe I can complete this PhD. Maybe I won't flame out at the tail end or the beginning of something really important for me. And everything's going well. And there's a chapter in the big book, chapter 3, more about alcoholism. And it's basically a handful of case studies of alcoholics who, and this isn't even about anymore what happens after we take the first drink. These are all folks who've decided that they really shouldn't take that first drink. And I am exactly like case study number 4. I'm like Fred. There's not a cloud in the sky, not a cloud in the sky. And what happens for me, the number one thing that kept me out of Alcoholics Anonymous, well, other than, I can control and enjoy my drinking, except for when I hideously can't. I can stop when I want to, except for when I finally couldn't. And besides, I haven't had a DUI yet. I haven't been confined against my will yet, even though I've been homicidal and or suicidal, but just never told the wrong people. I thought I'd never lost a job because of alcohol or drugs, but it turned out I'd lost many because of alcoholism. And I discovered that in my 4th and 5th step. And, but I knew this idea that I have no power, choice, or control whether I take the first drink. And my experience is this: I've always actively chosen the first drink. That's how it felt. Now, in 2019, my father, I had a chance. I didn't know that just shortly thereafter, I would enter Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would start taking these steps. And I would, I would struggle with that, with the God thing, but I did not struggle at all with the idea that, that I learned that I'm truly an alcoholic because of what I'm about to tell you. But then I was able to surrender entirely in that way. And what that meant was every day I was going to like 2, 3 meetings a day because I wasn't working at the time, and I was just plugging away at my little job and to finish that internship and also to finish that dissertation. And in that second step, there was a guy named Jason Smith. He passed away in 2010, but he took me under his wing when I was new. He said, I know you're having trouble with the God deal. And the first 3 steps for someone who's struggling with the idea of God or who's agnostic or atheist is that step 1, I can't drink right and I cannot drink right and I can't manage my life well. Step 2, I can't fix it on my own. And step 3, a decision to take the rest of the steps. And I'm arguing with the man like, Jason, what are you talking about? I see the word God in there. I see that, God is doing this now. I see the power ground myself. And restoring me to sanity. And he says, yeah, that's fine. But right now you think too much. The less you can think and the more you can do, the better. And he told me this thing that his sponsor, now my current sponsor, Johnny H., founder of my home group, told him, which is the 12 steps are designed to empty me of me so I could automatically fill up with this power that we happen to call God. And I didn't know that Johnny was quoting his Papa Chuck Chamberlain, and I didn't know that Chuck was basically paraphrasing this this medieval mystic named Meister Eckhart. Eckhart Tolle changed his name to mimic to be like Meister Eckhart, and Meister Eckhart really thought of kind of the human self. As something that if we can empty ourselves of ourselves, he said that God abhors a vacuum. And when we empty ourselves of all of our desires, just empty ourselves of all of our will, just everything, just surrender entirely, that we fill up with God. And it's difficult for me to surrender entirely. Thank God no one made me do all 12 steps at once. Thank God it happened one thing after another. And so I would, and Jason assured me that the decision to take the rest of the steps, doing that 4th step, and that's what I ended up doing. Glenn's got a really great. He was bragging about the conference that's coming up, and I remember hearing Teresa right before I did my 4th step, and she's talking about how just having blinders on, just focus on the next column, the next thing to write. Don't think about the next thing. And because her sponsor told her, just write it down. You never have to tell it to me until she wrote it all down. And then the sponsor said, now read it to me. And I didn't know that this whole process was a self-emptying process. I didn't know that this whole process, my dear friend Ralph W. summarizes the 12 steps in 4 words, and I'll personalize it. Shrink, hero, grow God. Shrink, hero, grow God. But it has to start with these 2 admissions of powerlessness. One, once I take a drink, I can't predict what's going to happen, and I have no power, choice, control over that drink. But as a result of taking these steps, as a result of doing that 8 and 9, in 4 and 5, discovering all of the things in me that block me from you and from myself and from God, and in 6 and 7, being willing to have them removed. And my dear friend Barbara F., who took me under her wing when I was new. She said, honey, just go into the bathroom and say, God, my name is Hero. I am an alcoholic. I humbly ask you to remove my shortcomings. And she promises me, she says, honey, he always will, as long as you leave that bathroom and act as if he already has, honey. And so I go out that, and so over and over, I would practice this over and over. And then in 8 and 9, the first amends were to my parents and to my wife. And it was made really clear to me. Really clear by members of my home group talking about how Johnny had taken them through the steps, especially my dear friend Tim, saying how the direct amends, where I'm saying, I behave in ways that are harmful to you. You're in the general way as what they were. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, I remember that. I regret that too. Would it be helpful for you to tell me the effect my behavior had on you? What could I do to make things right? And my sponsor at the time had me write down those things so I would remember, because I've got a good forgetter. And it was clear that 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 direct amends was just the announcement of the behavior change that started when I first raised my hand saying, my name is Hiro, I'm an alcoholic, and I hope continues until my last sober breath. And as a result of that, I established this amazing relationship with my parents. And as a result of that, I started doing things I don't usually do. Like it used to really bother me in that I would treat people in my home group, people I don't even like in my home group, better than I treat my wife, my parents, my coworkers. And this would really eat my lunch. And I realized that the 12th step is written this way for a purpose that I get to practice in my home group. And then over and over, every time I'm with my fellows, and then it starts to trickle outward. All these principles start to trickle outward into my home and into my family and into my work and into the community. And historically, I already told you I'm a hedonist. On my own power, I don't visit hospitals. I don't see you when you're sick. I don't go to funerals. I don't do any of that. But I started being asked to do that in my home group. I started practicing with members that would get sick, members that are on their deathbed, going to memorials and to funerals and to sporting sponsees and home group families and showing up the way that we do. And as a result, when my father fell in 2018 in Japan, when he was with my brother and my brother's then new wife, and fell back at home in Claremont, California, and couldn't get up that December. And by January, couldn't sit up on his own and couldn't get out of bed anymore, and started losing fine motor control. I couldn't eat with chopsticks anymore, and he was basically doing childhood development backwards, really, really fast. It was like multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's on speed. It was hideous. But as a result of that, he would start forgetting English in the evening. Now, this is a man who retired with 50 patents under his belt in polymer chemistry. He switched gears in his second postdoc on it. Brilliant, brilliant man. And he would forget English. And I knew what that was. The medical term for that is anosognosia. A without. Gnosis, same thing as agnostic, knowledge or wisdom. The nose was like nosology, which is the study of disease. So he had no knowledge or wisdom that he was in the disease process. He had no knowledge that he had forgotten English. He was just speaking Japanese. And thanks to going to that Japanese speaking meeting every week, I could sit by his bedside and I could do what people told me to do. And you all told me he might seem asleep, he might seem unconscious, he might seem delirious, but he can hear you. Tell him all the stories. Tell him all the stories of things that you're grateful for. Tell him all the memories. And I'm telling him about, in Japanese, about that time when we started off at 50 miles south of Mount Whitney. And we went down the John Muir Trail for a week, 75-pound packs with my little Boy Scout troop. When we summited Whitney up the west face, we got to the top. And it was a day when there weren't that many clouds, but we're seeing the tops of clouds. And we'd see the ocean sparkling. We'd just see forever. And a moment like that, and I'm telling him all these stories. And it doesn't matter that he can't remember English, and he doesn't even know that he can't remember English. He's got that anosognosia. I'm able to tell him these stories and be at his bedside so that when he finally passed that April, I knew that we were clean. I knew. When someone asked me to go to a wine tasting a month before my sobriety date, I didn't know that I had anosognosia. I had no idea. I'd completely forgotten. And I didn't know that I had forgotten that I couldn't take a drink. And I go and take a drink. And it's a wine tasting. They get these little tasters from light to dark. And I'm thinking, this will work just fine. And of course, I'm crazy by the end of the month. And my wife confronts me with those dead glass taxidermy eyes that are terrifying. And she's like, I don't know, part owl now, like her eyes are going blink, blink. It's contempt, blink, blink, and it's horror, and it's blink, blink, despair. And she's like, what have you done with my husband? Who are you? Give me that Visa card, that debit card, give me all your damn cards. We might be done. And I was so scared. And that night I make a SOS phone call. And I don't call any of you. I end up calling the only person I can think of. I had a lot of your numbers in my phone. People were so happy, joyous, and free in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if I didn't call any of you, I'd call the only person I can think of. It's 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night. She picks up on the third ring. And I'm surprised. I'm like, Mary, I'm so glad you answered the phone. I don't trust my shrink. I think I need a new shrink. I think I have bipolar. I think I need some lithium. And she's never heard me in this terrified manic state before. And she says, Hero, what's going on? And I tell her, it's my first surrender in retrospect. I tell her all the skeezy acting out I'm doing. I tell her all the crap I'm pouring into my body, not to even get drunk or high, but just to try to get to okay. I can't even get the whole okay. My body's drunk. My head's telling me, Hero, you suck. You can't even treat right. What the F is wrong with you? And that's just that self-abuse in my head over and over and over. And it just won't shut off. And all the catastrophes are coming and the impending doom. And I can't get away from me. And it's that bitter morass of self-pity, quicksand was spread all around me. And I had no idea. I had no idea that those are words in the big book that describe exactly how I felt. And I burned for 20, 25 minutes trying to tell her all the things I'm trying to do just to get to okay, and I can't get to okay. And at the end of that, she says, Hero, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober for 22 years. Maybe you need a meeting. And something just breaks in me. I describe it as like a branch 2 inches below my belly button that just goes, and I just start sobbing. I'm doing stomach crunches involuntarily, going, yuck, like snot pouring out the nose. And it's kind of like when my daddy was dying in 2019, I would sit in my home group and I would hold my emotions together while the 2 10-minute speakers would share, and we'd have our little coffee break where there's no coffee, but there's amazing donuts. And then I would sit back in my seat and someone would get up to be the main speaker. And as soon as they say, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, all the waterworks would just start pouring down my face. And I'd be trying to, I would try to really stay quiet. And I'd be rocking back and forth in my seat. And I've never been to an orgy, but it felt like, a sexless orgy. There were hands on me and comforting me. I didn't know whose hands they were, but I didn't know who was touching me, but it felt good. And I just remember just sobbing in my home group and crying this just complete release in this way while my daddy was dying and after he died. And that's the way I was crying, except back in 2007, what had died was all of my hopelessness hadn't died, but my inability to access hope had died from, like, it came back. My hope came back for a moment, and a lot of fear too, because I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that one day at a time meant forever, but I decided that I would try to pay attention to today. And she's the one who taught me how to send you to AA. This was the most bewildering thing. She taught me how to tell you things like, you might not drink right. You might need this place called Alcoholics Anonymous. They know how to stay sober there. I can't help you with that. She taught me to tell you, go there to identify, not compare. Go there to listen for similarities, not differences. She even told me to tell you, if you hear about God and you don't believe in God, or you have trouble with God, don't worry about that. That is advanced Alcoholics Anonymous. That is a later step. And the next day I went to my first home group, the Round Table in Long Beach, and I heard a man who's nothing like me. But he shared about being stone cold sober with a gun in his mouth, and he was wanting to die. And I knew, and he said, as a result of AA and having a home group and having commitments in his home group and always looking for a couple more guys, take all the way through the big book, one line at a time, the way he was taken through it. And every time he told us to do something or share or pray something, we do it together. And I asked him to sponsor me, and he did that with me. And then that thing happened, that that COVID thing happened, right? And by this point, I'm sponsoring a lot of people. By this point, I'm a decade into being sponsored by Bob, and I just love Bob. He was my sponsor for now 12 years here in Vegas, and of course Zoom opens up. Like all of a sudden, the LA Brady Bunch TV show. For alcoholics, and all of a sudden people are getting sober in AA. Thank you, Glenn. And tell you something about AA in Japan. Japan's has a little under half the population of the United States shoved into 3/4 the size of California. And Japan will be celebrating 50 years of Alcoholics Anonymous next year. But back 4 years ago in 2020, I was supposed to go to the 45th anniversary and take like a bunch of alcoholics with me, a bunch of like general service folks, from the Pacific region, and take them to Japan and to celebrate the 45th anniversary. And Japan's a trip. There's only, at that time, the census was 5,000 sober alcoholics. By the time we were 45 years old here in the West, we were close to 2 million. And of those 5,000 members, something like 2% were women. And as a result of COVID, as a result of hideous disunity in the world. If you think about the history of AA, we were born in disunity. We were born during the Depression when horrible imperialistic and fascistic things were happening in the world. A Big Book was written at a time when Japanese were doing horrible stuff. 2 years after my dad was born in occupied Shanghai, and the Italians are doing horrible things to the east and to Africa, and the Germans are doing horrific things. And oh man, and this is when AA is born. And when we adopt the traditions, the utopian principles that allow us to have to stay together and have groups, even though they're people by us, anarchic, narcissistic alcoholics, and our general service conference and the 12 concepts of Alcoholics Anonymous, which allow us to have a form of governance. All these things happen at horrific moments, and I think back to that moment of how I got sober at a time when, after the real estate market just fell apart and we had a banking crisis, and some of you were sober during the whole lockdown thing, and here we're able to be, because the worse things are in the world, the tighter and closer we get. And if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, welcome to the Worldwide Fellowship. When I came to AA, I didn't know what a fellowship was. Well, I thought I knew. I thought it was churchy, and I didn't want that, or I didn't know how that would fix me. Or I thought it was hobbits and cosplay, and I thought that'd be really fun, but I didn't know how that would help. But I learned exactly what a fellowship is. A fellowship is where we all have the same problem and we've discovered the same solution. And we've taken a vow to care for one another, take responsibility for one another, nurture one another, to love one another. And my dear friend Anne, who helped me to ask Johnny to sponsor me, and I asked him on Monday, I'm able to sit down all the way in my home group. First time I've been sponsored in Big Book group. I'm able to sit all the way down in my seat after he said yes. And I was able to come here to Vegas and let my previous sponsor, know and thank him for the last 12 years. And about to fly back to my home group, where I trudge with everyone, and I'm able to love them and let them love me, take responsibility for them, let them hold me accountable. And all I know is it's a beautiful, beautiful life. Thank you for